What is up, everyone? Thank you for joining us. This is the Buffalo Fanatics tailgate for the Tennessee Titans game, Monday Night Football, boys. How we feeling? Let's go around the table here. Evan, we'll start with you. You're new to Buffalo Fanatics. Thanks for joining us today on our tailgate show. How you feeling? What's the general feel for you throughout the day, throughout the week? What's going on?
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. The general feel for me going throughout the week is just kind of been getting through the Thursday and the Sunday games. I first time forever I got to sit down and watch all the Sunday games, and I've just been kind of preparing for this Monday game. This Monday game has been the biggest game of the week, obviously for us as Bills fans and a lot of people around the country as well. So my mindset has just been getting ready for this Monday game. I just kind of had a relaxed Sunday, watched a lot of the games. I watched all four games yesterday on Sunday, but my mindset has just been getting ready for this Monday night game against the Tennessee Titans.
That's good to hear, and I agree. This is a big game. The revenge tour is not over for the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen yet. The spy, BF spy, Eric. How you feeling about this game? What's something that has been on the top of your mind this week?
What's been on my mind is I think this is an establishment game. What I mean by that is the Bills not only have a chance of revenge here, but they have a chance at solidifying and establishing more superiority than they already have in the conference, in the league, however you want to look at that. But Tennessee is a good team in the AFC, and they're one of the few teams left that have a sort of unblemished record. This game has implications, if it swings one way or another in terms of the Bills' win or loss, that has a lot to do with the standings, it has a lot to do with the seedings, and it has a lot to do with how we'll look at this team. So I'm looking at it from that establishment point in terms of superiority.
I agree. I like that aspect of it, and that maintaining that superiority, especially when this is a team that kind of blew us out of the water last year. So it'd definitely be a statement game here. Nap, what about you? What you feeling right now?
I think this is a little bit of a revenge game. I know nobody on the team is going to say that. They'll never say that leading into the game. But this last week and this week, I think they mean more to the Bills than some of the other games on the schedule. Like, they got embarrassed when they played Kansas City last year, and last week they just flipped the switch on them. Last year when they played Tennessee, they got embarrassed on national television. I think these two games mean more. I've been thinking that the entire week. I think it's a little mini FU tour that the Bills are on these 2 weeks. So I've oddly been comfortable. A lot of times going into a 1 o'clock game, I feel comfortable. Going into even a 4 o'clock game, I feel comfortable. But like when the bright lights are on, sometimes you get thinking about the game a little bit more. This week, I haven't really been nervous because I think the Bills are just that much more of a superior team than the Tennessee Titans. Yes, the Titans have good players, but the Bills are just much more complete to the point where as long as everybody does their 1/11th, then we should see the similar result to what we saw last week. So I think it's a bit of an FU game to the Titans and to what happened last year, but also just do your job and then things will work out.
I agree. The Bills are so good at that coach speak now, where it's the biggest game because it's the next game. But we all know that there's a little bit of extra fire because of the history between the teams and because who the Bills are and what they're trying to do and make a statement. So before we get into anything else, we got 133 people in here right now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here this evening. And the first thing I noticed when we got in here, we got a little bit of a bing, bingity, bing action. Jessica Tennis, thank you for becoming a member. If I had a bell, I'd ring it. So thank you, Jessica Tennis. I know I've seen you around here before as well. We appreciate that. I know we got a lot of regulars in here as well. We appreciate everyone who's joined us on this beautiful Monday night to get ready for some Bills football. So let's talk a little bit about that game last year and about how things are kind of flipping the script a little bit from this year. So last year the Bills had some key injuries on both sides of the ball. John Brown and Zach Moss on the offensive side were both out, and then Tre'Davious White and Matt Milano were out on the defensive side. I'll start with Knapp here. Knapp, how do you think, from a standpoint of last year to this year, obviously Trey White and Matt Milano are huge parts of that defense, and them being out, could have resulted in what happened with that defense last season. With the Bills being one of the healthiest teams in the league this season, I'm knocking on wood right now. I definitely think that there's an advantage just from last year to this year with the injuries. What's your opinion on that, and how do you think the game could be different this year?
I mean, I think it changes literally everything. I mean, with the players that were missing, those were guys who, at the time, I mean, John Brown didn't end up being as big of a factor in the offense moving forward after that. But everybody who was either out or playing injured was a very important player. Like even Josh Allen was playing hurt that week. He had his shoulder injury at that point in time. So I think the team's health is huge. I know last year we were going against a team that was missing a lot of players, but when your quarterback is hurt, when one of your top wide receivers is hurt, when a running back who's supposed to play a key factor for the team is hurt, and then you go on to the other side and your best defensive back and your best linebacker are also hurt, it changes everything. So having all of those guys healthy is going to make a whole world of difference. We saw last year the defense just didn't ever look the way we wanted it to, but this year they're the best defense in the league. They're the best scoring defense in the league. They have the most takeaways. They're just playing at a completely different level, both on offense and defense, and the offense hasn't even really hit their stride yet. So I think having everybody healthy changes everything for the Bills, and it should make the Titans nervous, especially seeing how well the Bills have been playing.
Agreed. We've got a super chat from Silas Whittle. Thank you, Silas. For anyone else in the chat that wants to comment, to come right up to our attention, if they really want something that they want us to notice here, send in a super chat and we'll pull that right up and we can talk about that comment for you. So thank you, Silas here. Also thrown in, we had no star, and Edmonds was also playing hurt. So the team was really beat up on that side of the ball. And then, yeah, no star definitely played a factor in the defense the whole year, it felt like, and having him back has been a huge difference. Let's go up to Evan. What are some of your thoughts on injuries from last year to this year? And you can talk a little bit about the Titans injury report as well if you're familiar with what's going on over there.
Yeah, so we don't obviously have the official Titans injury report yet. The only player on the Titans right now that really sustained not to play maybe is AJ Brown. He's got an illness. He's questionable. We'll find that out soon. But yeah, looking back at last year, obviously we didn't have Milano. We didn't have Trey White. No John Brown, who's replaced now by Emmanuel Sanders. We didn't have Zach Moss. But now you have Zach Moss and you have John Brown's replacement in Emmanuel Sanders. And on the defensive side of the ball, you have more guys coming in the lineup than you didn't have last year. You have Starback. You added guys like Greg Rousseau, Boogie Basham. You have an emergence in AJ Epinesa. You have a healthy Tremaine Edmonds. Obviously, Matt Milano being back is a key factor as well. Obviously, in the secondary, you don't have Josh Norman as your CB2, your CB1 playing with Levi Wallace. You got an all-pro corner that's solidified in this league in Tre'Davious White. Obviously, Levi Wallace is manning the second cornerback position over on the other side of the field. So that is a huge part for the Buffalo Bills defense. And obviously, this defense has just been balling out this year, and having all that continuity on the defensive side of the ball, playing together at a high level. And as you mentioned, we're one of the healthiest, if not the most healthy team in the NFL. Having all those guys and having a lot of big-time playmakers coming into this team as well, like I said, with Greg Rousseau and having Starback, this could be a big factor for this Buffalo Bills defense moving forward and tonight going against the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football.
I agree. Well said. Eric, do you have anything to add about the injuries from last year to this year?
I do. I really like what both Kyle and Evan have said. I think it's very on point, but I will add also that mental health and mindset and attitude is all part of the approach to a football game for a professional football team, especially for a team as cohesive and tight-knit as the Buffalo Bills is. We've said for years, trust the process, trust the process. Well, it's been trusted, and now it's been turned into something. And even last year, that was true. Now, I think that more so than just the physical injuries that we went into that Tennessee game with last year, we also went into that game with a messed up mindset and some pretty questionable stress points in terms of how these players are being affected mentally by what they had to deal with. First of all, they were dealing with a pandemic, just like we all are and were then. And there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of stress. There was a lot of anxiety about that. Even if they'd never admit that to the press, you have to estimate that that was the case. Now, I think we're going into this even better prepared for those types of problems this year than we did last year, with an even more cohesive team and a team that's literally more together because they're all going to be on the field tonight. So I think that's an important takeaway beyond just the physical injuries, is noting the difference in the mental mind state or between last year and now this year.
I agree, and that's a great segue into a super chat from Fabian K. Thank you, Fabian. And also, the Titans had an extra week off because of COVID-19 last year too, and that's true. They went into they'd only played 4 games at that point in the season. They had to take an early bye week because of COVID, and the whole schedule got screwed up. And we can make excuses if we want about how that schedule messed up with the Bills. It seemed like the Titans weren't too affected by it, and they almost had a chip on their shoulder because of it. The Titans. So definitely will be interesting to see how it's much more normal. It's a normal schedule. The game's being played when it's supposed to be played this year. So it'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out. There was a comment that I saw earlier that I want to touch on as well from Lone Wolf here, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. It'll be interesting to see what D linemen are active tonight. So last week we saw a lot of smaller linemen. They took out a lot of those guys, the bigger guys. Harrison Phillips was inactive, and then Butler as well was inactive. So they took out those big guys, and they decided to go with all the small set, kind of the more athletic guys to be on that defensive front. What do we think we're going to expect, in this game, and how's that going to be different from maybe what we did last week or what we did in the past here? Evan, I'll start with you on this one.
So obviously last week, I think they wanted to go with more length on the defensive line. Obviously, you want to contain Patrick Mahomes like they did last week. That's why, obviously, guys like Greg Rousseau and they had F.A. Obata in the lineup as well. Today, I think you have to go power versus power. You're going to have a powerful D-line going up against a powerful running back in Derrick Henry. I think they might throw Harrison Phillips and Vernon Butler back in that lineup. Obviously, Star Latulippe, he is an offensive line magnet. He's going to suck up double teams left and right. And obviously, Ed Oliver should have his fair share of one-on-ones. But I think they should go with a more, beefier defensive line look tonight going up against Derrick Henry.
I agree. Eric, what's your opinion on that?
I agree with Evan. However, I don't really think you're going to see a lot of Harrison Phillips and Vernon Butler, and I'll tell you why. To be frank, I just don't think that Vernon Butler is all that good. The same applies with Harrison Phillips. I think he's been affected by his knee injury that he suffered not so long ago. But I also think that Justin Zimmer has surpassed expectations on this team. And I think that he's a lot more versatile and useful than people give him credit for. People think he's somehow small. I've seen that mentioned before. I've had people say that to me on Twitter. I don't understand what images you're looking at when you're looking at Justin Zimmer, but he's definitely not small. I think the thing with Justin Zimmer is he's agile. He can do anything you ask of him. I think you're going to see him in that rotation. He's going to be asked to do a lot next to Ed Oliver in rotation and with Starr as well. I think that's my trio on the interior for who I'm looking for to make an impact in this game. And I think if Derrick Henry's not running on the inside, I think he's going to run into Justin Zimmer and Ed Oliver a lot as he tries to cut it and run and pivot and move in that backfield.
So we actually have the inactives are out. They've been posted. Here are the inactives for the Bills tonight. Matt Breida, Tommy Doyle, Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, and Vernon Butler all inactive for tonight. So, Nap, we get to come around to you now. You get to be the first one to answer this one. Any surprises there? There's one that kind of sticks out to me.
I think that's
what do you think about those inactives there?
So I think the big surprise right off the bat, obviously, it's AJ Epinesa because he's played really well with his get-off speed, getting off the line of scrimmage, getting the advantage that way. But he hasn't really had that statistical production that you would expect it after that, at least at this point in the season. I think that they wanted to bring it back a little bit to what both Evan and Eric said. I think they want to probably split the difference, not just go full force on let's just get really big in the center of the line. Let's fight power with power, because we can't look at Derrick Henry as just a power back, because he is one of the faster running backs in the NFL. It looks crazy when he runs because he's so big, but he moves so much faster than you expect. So you can't just fight power with power, which is why I don't think they made Vernon Butler active. They still have to have that power speed mix. They got to be able to clog up the line of scrimmage, but they still wanted to keep F.A. Obata, who can play inside and out. And I'm surprised by Epinesa. I can't get away from that. But I'm not surprised that we didn't see both Harrison Phillips and Vernon Butler active. I'm really intrigued as to why Epinesa is not active.
Do you think he's still hurt?
That probably plays into it. If he's not 100% and you have Obata, who you have confidence in, then it makes sense to play one over the other at that point. If you have a guy who has been playing well, but he's not really fully there, play the guy who's healthy. So that definitely could play into it. But with the way, I mean, it's really difficult. It's not a situation where you have too many guys who like they have to be active because there's so many guys in the defensive end rotation. So you look at like Rousseau and I guess Jerry Hughes would probably be the only two guys who are like you have to make them active. Everybody else at some point or another this season could be on the inactive list just because of matchups or health or whatever reason. If somebody's not 100% healthy, it's understandable why they would play somebody else.
Yeah, I'll agree and kind of bounce off that just a little bit. And I think it's interesting that they did both Basham and Epinesa. That one is a little because you'd think maybe one or the other, maybe you take one of those guys out. But having both of them out is interesting. I think it shows they have a lot of faith in Mario Addison and what he's been doing this season. And I do think he's been playing a lot better. So that's been a good surprise is seeing how good he's been doing. And Obata is also playing really well. And he's another one of those guys, just like Boogie, that can shift into that 3-tech spot as well. So he's got that versatility on that defensive front there. Before we move on, I do want to get the Titans inactives out there as well. So the Bills AJ is out, but the Titans AJ is in. AJ Brown will be playing. He is not inactive. The inactives for the Titans today: Josh Reynolds, Mekhi Sargent, Monty Rice, and John Simon are the inactives, for the Titans today. So AJ Brown will be active for the game. Let's move it over to Evan. We didn't really hear too much about the inactives from you. Either side of the ball, either side of the field here, what do you feel about these inactives?
Obviously, for the inactives for the Buffalo Bills, I'm not a big fan of plugging out both Basham and Epinesa. Obviously, the Bills know more than me, but I'm just saying, I would have liked to see Basham or Epinesa in there. Obviously, having both of those guys out is weird to me and really kind of shifts your defensive line going forward in this game. I would have liked to have Epinesa in there just because, obviously, like you guys stated, his get-off speed has been one of the best, if not the best in the NFL up to this point, 6. And I thought Basham's been kind of productive the last couple of weeks. I mean, he hasn't really been a standout rookie, but he's made some nice plays here and there for the Buffalo Bills in the past couple of weeks, even though he started the year inactive 2 weeks in a row. But yeah, for the Titans, having Josh Reynolds inactive. You mentioned Josh Reynolds was inactive.
Yes, Josh Reynolds is inactive for the Titans.
He's not anything special at receiver for them, but he is a productive receiver, and he had a nice career over with the LA Rams. So having him out is a blow for the Titans because he is a pretty solid, productive receiver.
He plays special teams too.
So while we're on the subject, we talked a lot about the defensive line because of those inactives. Let's talk a little bit about Derrick Henry versus the Buffalo Bills and his history against the Buffalo Bills. Derrick Henry has gone up against the Bills 3 times in his career so far, and here's his stats from those 3 games combined: 50 total attempts, 191 yards. That's good for 3.8 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns, 1 reception for 3 yards. That's all that he's gotten against the Bills over his 3 games that he's played against them in his career. Evan, I'm going to stick with you. How do you feel about Derrick Henry tonight? What do you think the Bills are going to try to do to stop him? And do you think the trend will continue of Henry not being able to play up to his ability against the Bills defense?
So obviously something that Sean McDermott preaches is consistency, and consistency is going to have to come up with this defensive line if you're going to want to stop Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, I don't think we're going to completely neutralize him and have him, stick around 50 yards the entire game. I wouldn't be surprised if Derrick Henry, broke off a couple big runs. I'm not talking like a 99-yard run or an 85-yard run, but Derrick Henry is going to get his plays. He's going to get his chunk plays, and so he is one of the best players, if not, he's the best running back in the league. He's one of the best players in the league as well. But yeah, the thing you're going to have to do with Derrick Henry is stop him at the line of scrimmage, even though it's hard. He's a 6'3", big running back. It's going to be hard to stop the guy at the line of scrimmage. Again, like Sean McDermott preaches, consistency. And obviously the Bills have been super consistent over the last 3 matchups going against Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans at neutralizing him. And I think they can do that as well too.
Nap, I'm going to slide it over to you. How do you feel about Derrick Henry versus the Bills? And do you think he's due up against us?
It would seem like he might be, but I think the thing that stands out when you talk about the previous games is that 2 out of those 3 games were kind of those close, grinded out games, and he still wasn't really getting that statistical production you would expect. So it's almost like Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier just kind of have his number, and they understand how to scheme their defense against him. So I'm just like Evan said, he's going to get his yards. He's going to figure something out at some point. He'll get a couple of chunk plays. But all in all, I mean, people go back to last year and think that he had this incredible game against the Bills because he ended up with, 2 touchdowns at the end that were kind of like garbage time touchdowns, but they always go to the stiff arm. Outside of that, he didn't do, like, he wasn't the reason that they won the game. They won the game because of their other players, because of the Bills' mistakes, because of the passing game. Like, there was a lot of other reasons. I think there's just something about what Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier do and what this Bills defense is capable of that they're able to slow down Derrick Henry enough. And I'm not expecting him to have, a horrible game, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him 75 yards or something like that. Something where it feels like he's been neutralized enough.
I agree. I think just to bounce off of it, I think the Bills kind of have his number, and what they're going to sell out to stop Derrick Henry. I think if anything, the Bills defense is going to try to make Ryan Tannehill beat them, and I think that's the way that they should go about it too. Eric, I'm going to move it over to you, but I'm going to add something on as well because I know that you've got a lot of knowledge on this after that article that you wrote. So Tannehill and Henry both have had a little bit of a difference in production. I know Henry, he's still Derrick Henry, so he can produce, pretty much just give him the ball and he'll produce. But Tannehill's been a little bit different this year. Can you touch a little bit on the difference between the 2 OCs going from Arthur Smith to Todd Downing and how that's been a difference in Ryan Tannehill's play and the offensive play for the Titans as a whole?
So, yes, I can. There is a complicated and complex relationship between former OC Arthur Smith and his departure to Atlanta and new OC Todd Downing. And also that relationship is intertwined with Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and their respective performances thus far this season. What I call it is a critical imbalance. What that means is things have changed more than people would like to admit between Arthur Smith and Todd Downing. Basically, what has happened is with Todd Downing coming in, a first-time OC, the offensive system, the play calling, the schematics, even the tempo has become much more stagnant and much more vanilla. That's harder to get through defenses when you're trying to execute a system that way because you can start to develop certain kinds of tells. That's exactly what has happened. Defenses have kind of figured this team out. They've also looked at the way the Bills have played against this offense in previous seasons. A great example is Arizona, who completely shut down Derrick Henry this year with their aggressive defensive line. And I foresee the Bills doing the same thing. One other problem this has created, and this is more of a problem for this year's offense with the Titans, is they're almost not using play action at all, which is a big problem for a team with the best running back in the league. If you can't use play action, if you can't get it right, especially with the receiving core that the Titans have, you have some serious issues, and they're barely using play action. And when they do, it's not working. So I think that it's going to be a major issue for Tennessee if they can't start to figure that out, because all it leads to is making things easier for the defense to be able to control Tennessee. If you can't use play action, that's one more weapon that you've now lost the ability to utilize. I think it's a big problem.
I agree. That's very well put. And if you guys haven't yet, go check out that article that Eric wrote there. It's got a lot more detail in that as well on that topic. Knapp, why don't you build on that a little bit? What I know I saw you nodding your head a little bit there. What were your thoughts?
I was literally just agreeing with every single thing Eric was saying. It seems like he's spot on. I don't know. I like the defense's chance to kind of neutralize the Titans offense. I think the one thing I will add on to that though, is I think part of the reason their offense has struggled is not only just the change of offensive coordinator, change of philosophy almost, but their offensive line as a whole is not playing all that well. Taylor Lewan, as much as people don't like him, which I understand why people don't like him, because he's just kind of a brass person. He's very willing to play the heel. He loves doing that. He's very good at it. But after his injury, he hasn't come back 100% yet. He's still not the player he was pre-injury. So he struggled on the left side of the offensive line. They don't run the ball as well on the left side of the offensive line. You saw against the Cardinals, their first game of the season, he really struggled. He still hasn't put together a complete game at the left tackle position yet. It's not like their offensive line as a whole is a great unit. So it's their offensive line is a key factor also, where I think the Bills have a real opportunity to not only control the line of scrimmage in the run game, but if they end up, or when I hope they end up getting a nice sizable lead, just kind of pin their ears back and go after Tannehill, because this offensive line is definitely very gettable.
And it's a trickle-down effect too, right, Knapp? I mean, it just goes from one level to another, from OC to quarterback to running back to offensive line, even into the receiving core. It's a trickle-down effect. You have what I call the avalanche. And right now, it's rolling.
Yeah.
So we've got 336 people in the show right now. Make sure you hit that like button. We got 69 likes right now. That's a pretty nice number, but I think we can do better. So make sure you hit that like button, and let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go to the other side of the ball here. So the Titans like to run a lot of cover one man, and I know that's something that you know a little bit about, Evan. So I'm going to ask you this question here. What do you think the Bills are going to do to try to come out and attack that defense that the Titans are going to be running, which is a pretty weak defense this year that hasn't really been able to stop much? So what do you expect to see? Do you think anyone's going to break out? What are your thoughts on what the offense can do today?
Yeah, obviously, most receivers' favorite coverage to go against in the NFL is man coverage, because they can just kind of work themselves and get open downfield, if it's crossing routes, post routes, whatever. And obviously, the Miami Dolphins run a lot of cover one man. And if the Titans are running this, you can see a lot of our receivers feasting tonight, whether that be Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, if he gets more incorporated inside the lineup, Emmanuel Sanders, even Gabe Davis might get a downfield shot, even though he's had limited snaps this year. I think they might take a different approach in the personnel package this week. I think you can see a lot of 11 and 10 personnel. I know we ran a lot of 12 and 21 personnel last week. Obviously, our main personnel is 11, but I can see us incorporating, a spread offense with 10 personnel with the 4 wide receiver set and 1 back in the backfield. I think we should do that, because obviously if you're going to play cover one man against this wide receiving core, you're going to face the repercussions of it, and our guys are going to get open against man 99.9% of the time. So I think Brian Dable and company should run a lot of 10 and 11 personnel, kind of spread out the offense, give Josh Allen his weapons, or allow his weapons to get open downfield and create some big plays for that Buffalo Bills offense.
Knapp, what do you think about that? Can you add anything on?
I mean, I think there's just going to be a lot of opportunities for whether it's running backs, wide receivers, or Dawson Knox as the tight end. In the passing game, there's going to be opportunities all over the field. The Bills have to execute to be able to take advantage of them. But if you're going to throw man-to-man against this team, if you're going to give them that look, like Evan said, the Bills should be able to feast on that. There's so many guys that you could just throw in a rotation, especially against a banged-up defense, a defense that I believe their starting corner is not playing, or Christian Fulton, at least he's their slot corner, I think. He's not playing. That opens up a lot of opportunities. I know Cole Beasley hasn't really been involved in the game plan, but if you have the opportunity to run him against a backup, why not take that? Like, there's going to be opportunities all over the field, and then if there's opportunities downfield and the Titans have to focus on that, we saw against the Chiefs once they started dropping back more, Zach Moss wide open on screens or just coming out of the backfield. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the Bills to get the ball moving fast, and hopefully put up a lot of points. And
to your point, Knapp, and this is an interesting thing to add on to that, Kevin Byard is a great safety, but he's being asked to do way too much in that secondary to be able to account for everything that's not getting done around him. And I wrote about this in my article, but Kevin Byard has almost become a one-dimensional safety. He's been dedicated entirely to coverage, and he can't do really anything else but that. So it's a huge issue that they've lost that, that ability he has to do both things. Now he's a one-dimensional safety, and that's unfortunate for them. To add on to that, Bud Dupree is a big enigma for this Titans defense. I wrote about it. I don't understand it. I think it has a lot to do with his injury to his ACL last year, and maybe he came back a little bit too soon. Maybe it was more severe than it was first thought. But BF's own chief editor, Zach Vaughn, dubbed him Dud Dupree, which I think is pretty satirical and funny. But so far in 2021, he has 2 tackles. Yes, that is the extent of his 2021 statistics. And the reason why I mention this is this also puts more pressure on that Titans defensive line. And though you have great players like Harold Landry, who's leading the Titans in sacks with 4.5 currently on the season, those other players are just being asked to do too much. And I think it's going to be more opportunities. Like Kyle said, it's going to be more opportunities for this Bills offense.
Yeah, Evan, do you want to touch it on that at all? On Bud Dupree, how much do you know about that and about his performance this season?
So something I've noticed when analyzing Bud Dupree is, he can get to the quarterback one-on-one, but early on in his career, he couldn't do that. And when TJ Watt came to town at Pittsburgh, while they were both paired up there on each side of the line, once TJ Watt came to Pittsburgh, that's when Bud Dupree's numbers started rising up. Right before he got injured last season, Bud Dupree, I believe, had 9.5 or 11.5 sacks. He was on pace probably to get an all-pro nod, or, he's going to make the Pro Bowl. He had a fantastic season last year, but not as like your traditional main pass rusher like a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt or a Khalil Mack or et cetera, where you're just going to get to the quarterback through double teams and one-on-ones. He can get to the quarterback one-on-one, but it's not as likely. He's kind of going to get to the quarterback one-on-one more of like Jerry Hughes or Mario Addison, where, he's going to be effective, but not what he's being paid for. And someone I want to touch on is Jeffrey Simmons. To me, he is the best player on on the Tennessee Titans defense. His stats aren't, showcased how elite he is this year, but if you watch Jeffrey Simmons, that guy's a baller. That guy can really disrupt any offensive line. He's just a force down in the trenches, and he's a guy that the interior offensive line needs to be prepared for. And going to the cornerback side of the ball for the Titans, I believe they got Janoris Jenkins. Grabbitt Jenkins is their number 1 outside with Christian Fulton. I believe he plays in the slot. And then they have Dane Cruikshank on the outside as well. I think those are their top 3 corners this year. And Caleb Farley, the number 1 draft pick, obviously isn't playing. And, Stephon Diggs is going to take full advantage of that. But obviously Caleb Farley, their number 1 draft pick, isn't playing. So that's a blow to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah. So to me, when I think about when I think Titans running cover 1 man, I think deep crossers. That's something that the Bills used super effectively last season, especially early on last season with those deep crossing routes. And it really was against the Titans where that stopped being effective. So I think it'll be interesting to see if the Bills are able to execute on those, which brings me to, can Diggs have a breakout game? Because Diggs is someone that's been pretty quiet so far this season. He's got less touchdowns than his brother, who plays on the other side of the ball. So I think it'll be interesting to see if he's able to get open on those deep crossers, because I think they're going to run him a lot. And we've seen a few different guys. We know Beasley can run those. We haven't really seen Sanders with him too much, but even Knox has been running those. And Diggs has been pulling the coverage away and getting these other guys open, which is why he hasn't been such a huge factor, because he's drawing that extra free safety in that cover 1 kind of, if there's a robber out there, he's usually going to Diggs. So it'll be interesting to see if now maybe Knox is starting to draw that guy a little bit more. Maybe Sanders is drawing that guy a little bit more, and maybe that'll change it and open things up for Diggs to have that availability again. I think he's due for a breakout game, and I think this might be the one to do it. Knapp, what are your thoughts on kind of the offensive firepower that we've got on the offense? Do you think anyone's due up for a big game here?
I mean, if there's anybody who's literally due for a big game, it would be Cole Beasley or Stefon Diggs. You already kind of painted that picture for Diggs. He's been good. I don't have any real complaints about him so far this year, but he hasn't been what we saw at the end of the season last year. We haven't seen that real explosive game from him that we saw multiple times last year. And then Cole Beasley, we all kind of know the story. His snap count has gone down the last couple weeks. And for whatever reason, whether it's game plan, whatever reason, honestly, he just hasn't really had the snaps. So I could see either of them being that, not really surprised, because it wouldn't be a surprise for either of them to have a big game because they're both extremely capable of it, but have that big game that neither of them have really had yet. I guess Cole Beasley had a 10-catch game earlier in the season, but it wouldn't surprise me to see either of them get back to that level this week against a defense that, I mean, really is struggling. And I do want to say real quick, though, I know we've said a lot about how the Titans are they're not really playing all that well on defense. They have a lot of people who are out. I don't want it to get to a point where we're just completely overlooking it, because I think that's what we did last year. I think we did a lot of that last year because they were the ones who were dealing with all the COVID issues. They had a lot of people out because of that. And we saw sometimes teams can just put it together in the right moments. So this still is a game that the Titans, though they have not had a great defense this year, though they have players who are missing, the Bills still have to actually go out and do their job in order to take advantage of all of those openings within the Titans game.
Eric, I know you want to say something to that. Jump on top of that.
I just think it's a great point that Kyle made, and I think that that's something that's going to be, a big awareness point for the Bills going into this game. I also think that, despite what I've said about players like Kevin Byard, who I think is the Titans' defense best player, I think if Josh is careless with the ball or where he's putting the ball, especially in that intermediate area of the field, Kevin Byard will be there. He leads the team in interceptions. He will be there. He's a ball hawk, and right now that's what he's being dedicated to in terms of how he's being deployed in that defense. So I think it's important that we be cognizant of the threats that are there, not just the weaknesses. And I think that's a difference we're going to see from the Bills this year that we didn't see last year. Last year, I don't think they were cognizant of exactly what they were going to be facing, when and where and why. The 5 W's, right? Very simple, but it works. So I think that's something that we should look out for and that the team will be looking out for as well.
All right, so we've only got a few more minutes left here until we're going to switch crews over. We got about 6 minutes here before we're going to change. So let's wrap it up here very quickly. I want to go around and get your opinion on this one. Who do you think is going to be running back 1 today for the Buffalo Bills, and why? Just real quick, let's go around. Evan, we'll start with you.
It's pretty easily Zach Moss. Ever since, obviously, the end of week 2 against Miami Dolphins, Zach Moss's snap count has been going up week to week, and rightfully so. He's the best blocking back in the Buffalo Bills. He obviously seems to be the best receiving back in the Buffalo Bills. And overall, he just fits this offense. Everything you want in a running back for this Buffalo Bills offense is Zach Moss. Zach Moss has been just the most productive back when given the opportunity. Devin Singletary has been very productive as well, but obviously Devin Singletary has had a little bit of a fumbling problem this year. He's like at tops of the league in fumbles for running backs. But overall, Zach Moss is just a clear-cut RB1 for me going forward.
Eric, what about you?
I think the RB1 tonight is going to be Josh Allen, JA17. I think he's going to have another big week on the ground. It's prime time. JA17 is going to be charged up. He's going to get out there, and I think he's going to lead the Bills again in rushing.
I have to say, Josh Allen is one of the better runners as far as patience goes on the roster. Zach Moss is getting a lot better with his patience, but Josh Allen really knows how to wait to let his blocks set up. So, Nap, who do you think is who's your guy at running back 1 this week?
For me, running back 1 is always the guy who's the more complete back, and Evan kind of touched on that already. That is Zach Moss. I think it's more than just being a good runner. Because if we look at the statistical production, I know Devin Singletary had 1 more game, but he is averaging more yards per carry than Zach Moss is on the year. But Zach Moss does more for the totality of the game plan, where I'm much more comfortable with him lining up as a wide receiver or catching the ball out of the backfield or pass blocking. Like, I think he does so much more for the offense as a whole than Devin Singletary does, though I really like both players. Like, I don't want it to get misconstrued where it's like, oh, well, Zach Moss is running back 1. Well, okay, let's sit Devin Singletary. I think when we have this conversation, a lot of people kind of take it that way, where
they do, but
they're like,
the team doesn't look at it like that.
Yeah, and there is no clear running back 1 in terms of running the ball. But when you look at the game plan, Zach Moss is out there more. He's doing more for the team as a whole. He's going to be involved in the game plan more. So he is running back 1, whether the stats for actual rushing yards show that or not.
Yeah. But Bills Mafia, you guys should stop arguing about this. Who's better, Motor or Moss? Because the team, the Buffalo Bills staff will never look at it that way. So long as these 2 players are here, Motor and Moss, they will never say, we have an RB1, we have a bell cow. That's not how they do business. They're going to take the hot hand. They're going to deploy them as needed, when the situations are warranted for each player. That's how it's going to work. So I think we have to look at this as more of a momentum standpoint than anything.
Yeah, and they don't have to say, here's our running back one, because as long as both guys are producing when they're given opportunities, it doesn't really matter if Zach Moss is getting 50% of the snaps and it's 50% for Devin Singletary or 75-25. As long as each guy is producing when they're out there, that's all we really care about. So the whole who is RB1 conversation, I will always be on Zach Moss's side for that. But as long as they're both producing, I have no complaints about anything.
I'll agree with. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
obviously, we've seen Reggie Gilliam's snap count, kind of burst up the charts a little bit the last 2 weeks. I'm just saying, I wouldn't be surprised if Reggie Gilliam gets a carry or two. He might get a goal line touchdown. The snap count has been up. Got to respect the fullbacks. Fullbacks do a lot of work too. So throw Reggie Gilliam for potential RB1 tonight.
I love the bold prediction there, and we're going to talk about bold predictions more in just a second here. First, I do want to say I agree with you guys. I think Zach Moss is a more complete back, but both of these backs can play so well, and it's whoever's playing the best, keep them on the field. I don't think it matters. I don't even think the coaches are going to know on a game-to-game basis who their guy is going to be that game. Maybe they've got it schemed up where it's these plays are going to be better for Zach Moss or these plays are going to be better for Devin Singletary. But once that game starts, I think they're just going to keep whoever is playing the best. They're just going to keep that guy on the field. Okay, we've got one more minute here before we switch over crews. So let's go around the circle here. Give me one bold prediction and then a score prediction afterward. Evan, let's start with you.
Oh, man, I haven't really thought of a score prediction yet because I've just been waiting for the game time. But one bold prediction is that Stephon Diggs gets his feet into the ground, has that big game. I wouldn't be surprised if Stephon Diggs goes for 125 and 2 touchdowns. You got to insert Stephon Diggs and get him going. Obviously, going forward, you want to get him going for the rest of the season. Stephon Diggs gets 125 and 2 touchdowns. Wouldn't be surprised if this game goes, 34-37 to 24 Bills.
Eric, we'll take it down to you.
42-9, Bills win.
Any bold prediction? Anything you think that's going to be a little out of the ordinary?
I think Dawson Knox continues his hot streak. I think Diggs also has a big game. And I think A.J. Brown gets an ejection for going at Trey White.
I like that one. I would love to see that. Nap, what about you?
I think this is the week that Cole Beasley gets back involved in the game plan. I think he is a part of this team moving forward. They want him to be a part of the offense moving forward. Sometimes schemes just don't work out where one of your better guys is the focal point. We know that's the case. We've seen that with other teams. But this is the week where I think he gets back involved in the offense. It might not be a huge game. It might not be a 10-catch, 100-yard game. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him having like 6 to 7 catches, 75 yards, and then another receiver going over that 100-yard mark. And then I got the score prediction. I got Bills 34, Titans 20. I think it's probably going to be a close game in the first half. Maybe even just the first quarter or something. It's a little bit back and forth. But at some point, the Bills are going to have to show that they're the better team on offense, on defense, everywhere, and they're going to start to pull away.
I think so too. I don't think this is going to be too much of an issue for the Bills, just because the way that they prepare for games, it's different. It's different than it's ever been, even from last year, I think. So going back to even that Houston game, I said we as fans can overlook this game because I know that the Bills are not overlooking this game. And that's the same way I feel about this one as well. So my bold prediction on the day, Dawson Knox is going to continue his touchdown streak as a passer. He's going to throw a touchdown back in his home state, back in his home city. So he played quarterback back in that city back in the day. So love to see him get that ball and throw it around a little bit. So thank you for all of you who have been here. Oh, my score prediction as well. I think I'm going to go probably like 32-18. Bills are going to win this one. I don't think it's going to be too much of a competition. Hopefully it ends with Zach Moss running the ball in that fourth quarter and killing the clock out. So thank you for everyone who's been in here. We just got up to 400 watchers here. So thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you hit that like button and we will be back with a different crew in just a second here. Any parting words from any of you guys?
Go Bills.
Go Buffalo.
Bills. I like it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the BF Tailgate. I am your host for this session, Tilt Money. You can find me on Twitter at Tilt Money. Right now, I am joined by some familiar faces that you all just saw and some new faces. So, Eric, Evan, thanks for hanging again for the second panel. And Zach, editor-in-chief of Buffalo Fanatics, joining us. And Manny Diol, gambler, writer, memorabilia, guy does it all. He is also joining us for this hour. So I'm going to start with the new guys. Zach, give me your high-level first thoughts on this game.
First of all, I just want to say, how about last week? That was great. And I think the Bills will probably continue that into this week, though obviously the Titans are a very tough opponent, though I would argue they're less tough than they were last year, partly because AJ Brown's limited. Julio's coming off a hammy. We don't know how effective he'll be, though you could say the same thing about Matt Milano on our side. And obviously we know that Derrick Henry is their offense. It's basically their game plan is something, Derrick Henry. Like you take out Derrick Henry, like the Bills have been limiting him the last 3 times we met. And with this high-powered offense, if they can get that motor running, there's no way in hell they're going to catch up.
I like it. And Jeff King comes in with the super chat. Gentlemen, thanks for the content. As always, folks, health and happiness to you and your families. Enjoy the game. Let's go Buffalo. And Manny, on that note, health and happiness. The Bills, healthy coming into this game. No major injuries to report of. Titans coming in fairly healthy as well, at least on the offensive side of the ball. What are your initial thoughts on this game?
The key for me is the switch. I'm kind of interested in the switch from AJ to Harrison Phillips. And if that has anything to do with Derrick Henry being the key for them. So I'm a little interested in that. And, I agree with Zach. And I said it on the Knock Nose Buffalo podcast. Like, is there anybody relevant for or do we really, is there anybody to really, care about on the Titans? Not really.
I mean, Eric, Evan, is there anyone to care about on the Titans? Eric, I mean, you gave a nice spiel earlier, but I want to hear, I'll put it to you this way. Are we not respecting the Titans enough in this game?
No, I don't think it's that. I will tell you this, though. You do have a stacked receiver core on the Titans, and really I should say duo. What I mean by that is the duo of Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. However, there's an interesting sort of dichotomy between the two players, and they've worked themselves into a bit of a paradox this year in 2021 thus far. And what I mean by that is they're not playing complementary to each other. The play of one receiver is not benefiting the other, and vice versa, no matter how you compare them. It almost seems to be that the route combinations they're running and the ways in which they're being employed in Todd Downing's vanilla scheme are not benefiting them as receivers, and moreover, are not benefiting Ryan Tannehill as a passer. We've seen a couple examples this year where A.J. Brown and Julio Jones have actually run the same route and sort of run into each other on the same play. And when you have your top 2 receivers doing that, it's obviously not going to go very well. So I don't think we're disrespecting the Titans. I don't think we're not giving them enough credit. To be honest with you, I think this is just a difference we're seeing in teams. It's when we talk about the Buffalo Bills, it's sort of take your pick nowadays, right? Take your pick. Who do you want to talk about that is a threat? We can talk about almost anybody, but we're in this position when we look at other teams where it's almost difficult to do that. I noticed yesterday watching football all day long that I'm like, these teams are bad. Most of them are bad. But when I watch the Bills, I don't have that feeling. So I don't think I'm disrespecting teams. I think it's just an affirmation of where your team is at compared to where other teams are at.
Evan, I'll ask you, the Bills are riding high after that Chiefs win. We know the Titans lost to the Jets a couple weeks ago. Everyone in the national media, local media, pretty much everyone's unanimous on the Bills winning this game. They're 6-point road dogs. I think it's 5.5 last I checked. Do you think we're overlooking the Titans heading into this bye week, or do you think that the Bills are just flat out have no reason to worry about this team?
Well, obviously, no matter who you're playing in the NFL, you should and have to worry about that opposing team coming into your stadium, or if you're going to their stadium on the road. But I don't think we should. We have to look at the Titans playmakers. They have some guys on the offensive side of the ball. When it comes to after the catch, when it comes to receiver being elite after the catch, AJ Brown is the best receiver after the catch in the NFL. And he's been doing that at a high level for the past couple seasons. And we know, despite the age, Julio Jones is still one of the best big play receivers in the NFL. It's one play he can take the top off the defense for 40 or 50 yards. He has some run after the catch ability as well. And obviously, they don't have that big play athletic tight end like they did last year with Johnny Smith. Obviously, he's over in New England now. He got a nice contract for himself. Good for him. But now they have Anthony Fursker, who's not that athletic. He's athletic, but he's not that Johnny Smith type of tight end where he can really stretch the defense, take the top off your defense. But the thing for me is, obviously, it's just containing Derrick Henry, make Ryan Tannehill to throw, But the thing is, if he does get the ball in A.J. Brown or Julio Jones's hands, you have to respect them because they're two of the top receivers in the game.
And I want to lead now into this comment. Great comment from Brendan here. And thank you, Brendan, for the super chat. Brendan says, the Bills are easily the deepest team in the league. We're not overlooking the Titans. We're just flat out better than them. So let me go around the table here and ask you guys. Eric, are the Bills the deepest team in the NFL?
I think so. Absolutely. I also think that they're the most healthy team in the NFL, which when you combine those two things, you have a powerful combination. I mean, let's look at the fact that the Bills have two running backs who can do different things and are different types of running backs. They're both benefits to the offense. You have a quarterback who's multifaceted as they come and is elite and is, I don't know if we've even seen the ceiling yet for this quarterback. You have a tight end who has emerged this year to, I would say, bordering on superstar status. He's a tight end one in this league. And he is producing and he is establishing himself. We have a receiver core that is maybe unmatched by any other in the league. And it's deep and it's experienced. And that's a very important thing to approach this game with. Go over to the defense. You have the most experienced secondary in the league. It's been together for 5 years. Let's think about that. And we have a budding defensive line that's been revamped and recharged, and they can play exquisite rotational football. So, yes, I think this is the deepest team in the league by far.
Nice. I'm going to go to you next, Manny. John DeMarchi comes in with the super chat, says, I have only 2 comments. That was a forward lateral on June 8th, 2000. And 2, Groot. So building on Eric's point about the rotation, and I made this comment on Thursday on the Air Raid Hour, and we saw the stats in that Kansas City game on the NBC graphics. The Bills are the heaviest rotation team in the defensive line. Ed Oliver is the lowest percentage snap count of the highest percentage defensive lineman on the team. This rotation, the Jags stopped Derrick Henry in the first half last week. Teams have been stopping Derrick Henry in the first half pretty easily I would say easily, but we look at his splits. He's 3.7 yards per carry in the first halves. He's 5.2 yards per carry in second halves this year. John says, Groot, this rotation, is this the key that the Bills continue stopping Derrick Henry like they've done a pretty good job of over the last couple times they've played him?
Yeah, I agree with Eric. We're a deep team. We've had injuries like Matt Milano. We still have AJ Klein behind him. We've had Poyer Teron Johnson out. We got players behind him. So we are a deep team. When it comes to rotation, I think that's the key. You got fresh people coming in and out. You're not logging, people a lot of minutes. So you got refresh. You got, today you will have Harrison Phillips come in. We'll have Oliver come in. We'll have Russo. You're going to get guys who are fresh in the second half. And I think that's going to be the key. And you got more athletic guys. Greg Russo, just a lean, long guy. And I'm pretty sure he can catch up to Henry a bit. I am surprised that AJ's out because I think AJ is kind of similar to Greg Russo in that way, but I can see why they wanted a big guy like Harrison Phillips in there.
Manny, I have a question for you as well when you get a chance.
Yeah, like I think it's key, and I've been saying it. Rotation is key for Derrick Henry because you got fresh guys coming in off the bench, and he's a dog, so he runs and bulls you over. He tires those defensive linemen out, and if you got fresh guys coming on in the second half, and they play successfully, yeah, you can contain Derrick Henry.
So, Manny, I've been making a lot of attention to this in light of this over the course of this season. I want your thoughts on. It's my opinion that the Bills are really rallying to the football on defense this year.
Mm-hmm.
They're gang tackling. It's amazing to watch. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's just in our mind's eye, or do you think that's something that's actually real?
I think we're keeping, as fans, we keep track of that a little closely than probably they do. But yeah, for sure, I've seen it more, especially with the young guys like Russo. Like, that I just watching his one play where he kind of, it was against Kansas City, where he kind of, Hilaire was going to the left and he kind of just got his hand to disrupt him and just slowed Hilaire enough for the whole team to come in and just stop him for a loss. And I think that's key. But as fans, we kind of watch it in more detail than maybe some other people do.
Zach, I'll go to you next and talk about Reed's super chat here. It kind of goes along the lines of, are we not respecting the Titans enough? But frame it from another way. Are the Bills in a spot here for a letdown? Does this game scream trap game to you? I mean, we saw the Jets beat this Titans team a couple weeks ago where maybe the Titans were overlooking the Jets a bit. So does this game, do you worry about this being a trap game at all for the Bills?
I mean, I guess the saying any given Sunday applies to literally every team any given Sunday. It's like that, or in this case, any given Monday night. Like any team can beat any other team any given day or any given matchup, but the Bills seem to be playing right now like they are the better team. They are the better team, in fact. And also, I think that the whole concept of the trap game is more just like a narrative talking point for fans and for the media than it really does affect anything the players do. Like, I mean, I'll admit that me as a Bills fan have about as much say in what the players are thinking as the air has anything to do with this pen being in my hand. It's nothing. It's just, I know it's hard to hear. And it's funny because we do like to talk about all this stuff, but this trap game narratives and stuff, the players, I highly doubt the players are focusing on whether or not they should be worried about the Titans, this being a trap game for them and that they could lose. They're just going to go out there, play their hearts out, and hopefully they just ball out as much as they did against Kansas City, against Washington, against Houston, and against the Dolphins.
If you look at statistics, it really disproves the whole trap game narrative. If you look at statistics and analytics, the simple fact of the matter is that 9 times out of 10, the better team wins. That's just how it is.
And that's
every so often you do have an anomaly, but the trap game thing, I've grown to dislike it more and more as I've gotten older and I've seen the value of analytics and statistics come through. But I think it's generally just kind of fake.
I think also that to Zach's thing is, I think if there were 2 games when the players saw the schedule, if there were 2 games that the players looked at it and circled as we need to prove for these 2 games, it's Kansas City and Tennessee. I think Allen and company went to that schedule calendar and just circled that game in bright red, both of those.
So you're not buying that they didn't even know they were playing Kansas City last week. All right, Evan, I'm going to ask you because this is something Steve and I talk about a lot, and it goes along with this comment from John. He says, the Titans will not beat us, but we must not beat ourselves. Penalties, turnovers, we need to play our game. Now, to Eric's point, 9 times out of 10, the better team wins. The 1 out of 10 times the better team doesn't win is usually when stuff like this happens, the turnovers, toxic differential type plays, penalties, things like that. So we know the Bills, they turned the ball over last year against the Titans. There was that early pass that went off of Andre Roberts' hands, and it kind of, in a way, somewhat snowballed the game. I know the Bills ended up tying the game after that, but it always kind of felt like they were playing uphill after that. So the Bills have been pretty good about not turning the ball over lately. Do you buy into this narrative at all that the Bills are the Bills can only beat themselves in this game?
Yeah, to a point. Yeah, I mean, I don't really see a way that the Titans really should beat us. I mean, obviously, if Allen gets a little too comfortable playing hero ball, there is a chance that guys like Kevin Byard, obviously you mentioned he's one of the best ball hawks in the league. If he gets going and picks off Allen playing hero ball, there's a chance Tennessee can get the score up on the Buffalo Bills. But I just saw something on Twitter over the last 9 regular season games, the Bills are winning by a margin of 40-15. Mm-hmm. The last 9 games, the Bills have just been amazing in the point differential, blowing out teams in the regular season. But yeah, I just don't see a way or a reason how the Titans should beat us in this game. Again, 9 times out of 10, the better team will win. And when the Titans did play the Jets played exceptional. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Robert Saleh really got Zach Wilson and that team playing exceptional. And obviously, the Titans didn't have Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. But again, even without those two, the Titans are still a better team than the Jets. Again, 9 times out of 10, the better team will win. And I see that coming to a point this Monday night.
So, guys, we're gonna do a little something different here. I'm gonna bring some fact or fiction, and I want to hear your takes on this. And I want to start by saying the Bills are number 1 in the league in points per game, and they're number 1 in the league in defensive points allowed per game, which is incredible. So, from a point differential standpoint, average in 2021, they're almost 22 points per game point differential. And it's just really incredible. So 34.4 points a game is what the Bills are averaging so far in 2021. So I'm going to start with you, Zach. Knowing 34.4 is their average points per game, fact or fiction, the Bills will score over 35 points tonight.
I will say fact, because they've been doing it for the past 4 weeks. I don't see any real reason why the Bills would not score 35 or more points tonight, unless, as previously mentioned, they shoot themselves in the foot, or Kevin Byard gets a turnover, or Josh Allen just struggles, which, again, I don't see that happening. So I will say that's a fact.
Manny, same question.
I'm kind of stuck because I have them scoring 34. So I guess so. I hope they score more.
Can you round up?
Yeah, I'll round
34.9.
Yeah, to a fact. I think so too. I think the offense looked good. They've been scoring. You've seen the games the last couple of weeks. Allen looks finally comfortable, and that offense with Knox and the run game improving, it just looks like a different dynamic right now for them.
Eric?
I'm gonna stick with my original prediction from the last segment, and I'm gonna stick with 42-9 of Bills dub. And I want to read you this stat that I saw on Twitter from ESPN Stats and Info. Josh Allen's 8 TD passes on Monday Night Football are the most by any QB in his first 2 Monday Night Football starts. The only QBs with more in their first 3 Monday Night Football starts are Dan Marino with 10 and Joe Montana with 9. Now, that is some pretty seriously legendary company to be a part of. And I think that the Bills are going to just keep scoring and blowing the roof off.
Evan, round it out for us.
Yeah, the only way I don't see us scoring over 35 is if we're shooting ourselves in the foot within the red zone. Obviously, the Bills have not been the best of, the Bills have not been the best of themselves within the red zone this season. The last 2 weeks, they've been a lot better. But, early on in the season, we've had some red zone struggles. The only way I don't see us scoring over 35 is if we have some red zone struggles early. But if we're going in the red zone, we should be punching that ball in the end zone, and we should put up over 35 on this Tennessee defense.
I like that because Brandon's super chat here is it reminds us all of tougher times. He said, remember when we used to guess if we'd score 20? Thankfully, those days are behind us, and man, what a difference a couple years makes. John comes in with a really interesting point here. He says, in the last 16 games, including playoffs, Buffalo is 13-3, 567 points for, 326 against, plus 241 differential, average margin of victory, 15 points. They've been better longer than folks understand. That's a full regular season's worth of games there. You could probably even go back to the beginning of the 2020 season and it probably looks just as good. But this team really has been good since the beginning of 2020 and really the end of 2019. The playoff game against the Texans aside, the Bills really have been playing well the last couple of years. So everyone has been talking ad nauseum about Derrick Henry, right? Got to stop Derrick Henry. The Bills have stopped Derrick Henry in the last couple matchups. So we're going to put our gambling hats here on for a second. And so I'm going to start with Manny on this one. The over-under for Derrick Henry rushing yards tonight is 97.5 per sportsbook.ag. So I'll say this, fact or fiction, or I guess we'll just say it's over-under Derrick Henry 97.5 rushing yards tonight. Manny, we'll start with you.
I say under. I think the last 3 games he has not hit 100 yards. I think so. I'd stay under. I think that defensive line is improved from last year. I think it's a lot stronger. I think they're better at tackling. I don't think you're going to see a Derrick Henry stiff arm this year. So.
Well, there's no Josh Norman to be the victim of that this year.
Too.
So
I'd like to see him try Greg Rousseau stiff arm. I think Greg Rousseau would
Greg Rousseau might have some words about having the best stiff arm. Zach,
or just longer arms.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry.
Over under Derrick Henry 97.5. Zach, rushing yards.
I'm gonna say slightly over in that Henry may get like
Eric's
30-some rushing yards in garbage time. But I'm going to say slight over with the caveat that it's garbage time when he hits it.
All right, Evan, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier on, Derrick Henry's going to get his chunk plays, whether that be 15, 20, or 25-yard runs. He is going to get his plays, rightfully so. And in the last 3 games, Derrick Henry's had 113 yards, 157 yards, 130 yards. Not against the Bills. I'm just saying regular season in general. Obviously, the last 3 times against the Bills, he has struggled. He's had his fair share of struggles against the Bills and Sean McDermott defense. But I'd say Derrick Henry does slightly get over the 97.5 yards in this game.
All right, Eric.
I say under, and I say that because I think the Bills' offense is going to put up too many points. I made this point in my SPY article. The more points you score in this Tennessee Titans team, the more disadvantageous it is for them to run the ball, and the less effective that Derrick Henry is because of it. That's one of the ways that Arizona shut him down when they played Tennessee earlier this year. The more points Josh Allen puts up on that scoreboard, the harder it's going to be for them to run Derrick Henry and have it be effective when you also hold that up against the clock.
All right. So kind of a split panel there. I like that. All right. It's been talked quite a bit about Josh Allen, the hurdle. We know hurdle number 2, 2.0, whatever you want to call it, Air Allen 2.0. So I want to talk a little bit about Josh Allen running the ball. And I can't remember which of you guys, it might have been Eric, it might have been you, might have been Evan. I can't remember, but you were talking about how Josh Allen is running the ball smartly, right? He's not taking hits. He's sliding this year. He's being sort of deliberate and selective when he decides to run the ball. And it's really worked out well for the Bills this year. So with Jeffrey Simmons in the middle of that defense, we know we got to respect him. I'll say fact or fiction, and I'll start with you, Eric. Josh Allen leads the Bills in rushing yards tonight.
I called this in the earlier segment, and I'm sticking with it. Josh Allen will be the proverbial RB1 tonight against Tennessee. I think he leads the Bills in rushing. I think he has 92 yards.
Wow.
Rushing.
92 yards rushing. All right.
92
Evan, we'll swing it to you.
Yeah, obviously back at the end of Josh Allen's rookie campaign, he had 3 100-yard rushing games in a row. And the nice thing about Josh Allen running more patient is the offensive line getting to the second level and really creating those gaps so Josh Allen can see, the second and third levels of the field and really dictate where he wants to move the football. Yeah, I don't know if he'll be the leading rusher today. I obviously consider it like Eric mentioned, but for me, it's kind of mixed between Josh Allen and Zach Moss. It really depends because Allen has that ability to break off a long run, whether that be 30 or 40 yards. But for me, I think the Zach Moss could be the leading rusher today for the Buffalo Bills.
All right. So Evan says Zach Moss. Now, Zach, Devin Singletary, he's proven to be, outside of Josh Allen, out of the running backs, the guy that's more likely to break off a big run. So do you think Josh Allen, fact or fiction, leads the Bills in rushing tonight?
I'm going to say fiction. I think in terms of rushing yards, I think Singletary might have more rushing yards than Josh Allen. However, in terms of like total impact, I think Zach Moss has the biggest game out of the three of them, because I think, as I typed a comment earlier in the first panel, I think Zach Moss is receiving back number one. I know we're talking about rushing yards and stuff, but if you can get him involved in the passing game, I think he may end up having more total yards than Allen and Singletary.
All right. Jessica comes in with a super chat. Thank you, Jessica. And apologies for the delay in here. She says, can't wait to see the changes after the bye week. So Jessica, she's allowed to get ahead of herself. She's a fan, right? As fans, we can get ahead of ourselves. Manny, are we getting ahead of ourselves on Zach Moss at all? And do you think Josh Allen leads the team in rushing tonight?
I don't. I do agree with the panel that he is being smart this year and picking his spots of rushing, and he can get loose for those big 20-30 yard games. But I see Devin Singletary. There's something about Devin Singletary that I think he just has this little hesitation and a little more vision this year than he has in the past. I think the O-line's been playing a lot better, building those gaps in the O-line. And I think Devin Singletary might have his breakout game tonight. I agree with Zach that Moss will be probably more yards, all yards, just because of the passing game. It seems like he's taken over the passing duties. But I really see Devin Singletary have a breakout week this week.
And I think that's interesting because it feels like, to me at least, every time we kind of start talking about one guy over the other one tends to come out with a big game, and we kind of like revert back to the mean a little bit. And that was to Eric's point earlier, where he said we need to, as Bills fans, stop really worrying about RB1s and these tags and just let the game dictate, right? Who's going to be, who's going to be the guy. I said on Twitter last week, I was like, for those, wondering for those in the hot hand camp, like it was Zach Moss against the Chiefs, right? He was the guy that game. For all we know, it could be Devin Singletary tonight. We don't know, right? And Zach Moss has a little bit more of the momentum right now, but we've seen this happen in the past where that kind of can shift back to the mean. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens tonight with the running game. The fact that the Bills have run the ball, not just more efficiently, but they have run the ball more volume-wise, and they've been doing a very good job of it. So I like where this team is at offensively right now. I think they've proven now, at least this year, even more so than last year, that they can run the ball when they want to, and they can use the running backs in the passing game as well when they want to, and it's really paid off. So we got about 10 minutes left on this portion before we kind of get ready for the game. So I want to borrow a little superlative we use at the air raid hour, and we've been talking about what the keys to the game are, the defensive line rotation, AJ Brown, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, the Bills. We've talked ad nauseum about Beasley and Diggs. Maybe it's their time. I want to go to the wild card. I want you guys to think of a wild card player for tonight that we really haven't talked about much leading up to this week that you think could have a big impact on the game. And Evan, I'm going to put you on the spot and start with you. Who is your wild card player for tonight?
Obviously, looking at the offense as a whole, everyone's kind of had their fair share of games, whether that be Dawson Knox, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley had a couple good games. He's due for a breakout game, and Stephon Diggs, obviously. To me, I just thinking about it on the offensive side of the ball. I mentioned this earlier. I think Reggie Gilliam has a big play, whether that's
a wild card. That is a wild card.
10 yards, or if it's just a dumping catch for a first down, or just if it's 4th and 1 and they give him the fullback dive or whatever. Reggie Gilliam's snap count has went up, like I mentioned earlier. He's due for just, I don't know what kind of play the Brian Daboll and the Bills have in store for him, but he's due for some kind of play. And I just want to see Reggie Gilliam get in the end zone and just have a splash play for the Bills offense.
Little spider 2Y banana maybe down by the goal line to Reggie Gilliam. Eric, wild card player for you tonight.
It's got to be Isaiah McKenzie. It's got to be a little dirty. I know he's going to have a great game. I know he's going to have a kick return touchdown. And I also think he's going to have a receiving rush from Isaiah McKenzie.
Now, remember 2 years ago in the infamous Duke Williams touchdown game, Isaiah McKenzie had that big jet sweep play that put the Bills in position for that touchdown, which really was a turning point in the game. So he doesn't need a lot of volume to make a big impact. So I really like that one. Manny, who is your wild card player of the game tonight?
I like Isaiah McKenzie returning. That's another one that I liked. But I'm going to go with Jake Kummerow. I think he's going to have one big catch. Denver.
Touchdown, Jesus.
Remember Denver. And
Put it in all caps. Put it in all caps. One big catch.
One big catch. He's going to have one catch, and it's going to be a big one.
All right, Zach, how about you? Who's your wild card? I don't know that you can top Jake Kummerow, but let's see.
I mean, it's TD Jesus.
They took my three. Yeah. They took the top three candidates for it.
Why don't we go, since they went offense, why don't you think of a defensive wild card?
I was shocked that Manny didn't go defense. I mean, he's all about that D line.
You know what I'll say? I'll say this may not necessarily be as much of a wild card as Gilliam, Kummerow, and McKenzie, but it's someone we've seen a lot of on the field. We've seen a lot around the quarterbacks, but he hasn't quite gotten a sack yet. He had 2 of Buffalo's 8 QB hits last week on Patrick Mahomes. I think Justin Zimmer gets a sack tonight.
You're a big Justin Zimmer guy. Everyone here knows it. You are a big Justin Zimmer fan. So I'd love to see that for you and really for the team and Justin Zimmer, because he's just such an easy guy to root for, to be honest with you. A lot of good options here in the comment section. We got Papa Kingpin saying Saran.
I think Zach Vaughn should be Justin Zimmer for Halloween, for the BF Halloween party.
We got some people saying Spencer Brown bringing that attitude tonight. I like that. Titans, we're talking a lot about their rushing game, but maybe, Spencer Brown, we got to give him some love there.
See Levi Wallace having a big game too.
I have a Titans wild card. I mean, I called this earlier. It was kind of a wild prediction. Clay liked the boldness of it. I think AJ Brown gets ejected tonight.
Yeah, that was a bold prediction
for going at Trey White.
That's bold.
That is bold.
I think Levi,
if it happens early in the game, I'm all for it, because it'd be nice to not have to contend with him. So
I think Levi Wallace could have a big game. I think he might be targeted a bit by Tannehill, and I think Wallace is going to be up for the task, and I think he might have a little game in him tonight.
That to me is a wild card for sure, because I don't like the matchup for Wallace, whether it's Julio or AJ. It's not a good matchup for Levi Wallace.
He's going to have to bring his A game tonight.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing, safety help too.
Yeah.
I will say about Levi Wallace, he does get a lot of criticism, but I will say, if you actually go back and watch a lot of his games, he's never really as bad as people make him out to be, and he's never really as good as people make him out to be. He's really just steady.
Good enough.
He just kind of rides that middle line most of the time.
I call him the Brad Johnson of cornerbacks.
He's the Brad Johnson of corners. I like that, Manny. All right, so we've got just a few minutes left here. I've heard Eric and Evan's bold predictions and score predictions. So I want to ask them a slightly different question before I get to Zach and Manny's bold predictions and score predictions. So, Eric, what is the one thing we will be talking about after this game as the Bills head into the bye week?
Defensive line play. I think it's going to be crucial to see how they control Derrick Henry again with this revamped defensive line, because make no mistake, it is very different than it was last season. So I think that's going to be a big point that's going to be on a lot of people's minds.
Evan, question to you. Matt Milano's back for this game. How effective do you see Matt Milano being tonight? Is it, obviously he's not on the injury report, so is it something where we should expect a big presence from Milano tonight, or is it one of those situations where you think he's going to be on a snap count?
I think it's going to be on a snap count, depending on how his injury is. The thing is, when Matt Milano is healthy, he is undoubtedly one of the best outside linebackers in the NFL. Obviously, before he got hurt, he was up in pace for tackles for loss with guys like Von Miller and some of those other guys. And I just want to mention, I was just looking at my Twitter timeline really quick. Caleb Farley is taking first team reps out at right cornerback for the Tennessee Titans. So Caleb Farley is good to go. I forgot he got brought off IR. And I said earlier he wasn't playing, but I misunderstood that. And he is starting at the right cornerback tonight for the Tennessee Titans. So whoever is lined up on that left side of the field should have an interesting matchup going up against Caleb Farley, the rookie.
Caleb Farley, a guy a lot of Bills draft Twitter and social media talked about leading up to the pre-draft process. Talent-wise, probably one of the best corners in the draft, if not the best, but you had those injury concerns. He's playing tonight, so we'll see how he fares against that Bills vaunted receiving core. So, Zach, I'm going to go to you before I go to Manny. I want a bold prediction from you tonight and a score prediction.
Well, I'll go bold prediction since I didn't do offensive player before for the wild card or whatever. I'm going to say bold prediction is Gabriel Davis gets a receiving touchdown tonight because he's been like a non-factor, but I think, you know what? They bring him up, bring him in the red zone for like one play in the big slot, and then he just finds him on a slant or something. And he's in the end zone. Boom. And for the score, I'm going to say Bills 38, Titans 24.
All right. Manny, over to you. Bold prediction. Nice, Evan. Pretty close. 1 point different. Manny, bold prediction and score prediction.
I'm going to go like Tilt last week, and I'm going to go with a pick six, but from the defense this week.
Nice.
Yeah, you might as well. And I think it is going to be Teron Johnson. And that's my prediction. And my score, 34-13 Bills.
34-13, big time. Listen, my thoughts on this game to wrap it up here. I am worried slightly about A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. I think they're guys you definitely got to respect. I mentioned on Thursday's show that we really need to respect Jeffrey Simmons. John Feliciano's got his work cut out for him tonight. He has kind of looked lost, to be honest with you, the last few games. I have not really been impressed with John Feliciano's play. I think the rest of the line actually has played better since those early games against Miami and Pittsburgh. Ever since Spencer Brown's kind of been inserted to the lineup, I've really been generally happy with the offensive line play, but John Feliciano to me is still sticking out as a weak spot on this line. So Jeffrey Simmons does concern me a little, and AJ Brown, even with that injury, he can make something happen on limited plays. And Julio Jones, he just keeps doing it, right? He age doesn't seem to affect him. He's battled through nagging injuries throughout his career, and he always shows up to play when he can. So I do think, my thoughts are that this game will be closer than maybe a lot of people are hoping for, but I do think the Bills are the better team and they will pull away at the end. I have the game going 31-20 Bills, same prediction I picked on Thursday. So they do cover the spread. They win by double digits, but I think, the Titans kind of keep it close. Henry maybe controls the clock for them a little bit, and they keep him involved in the game up until like the mid to late third quarter, and the Bills eventually pull away. So that's my thoughts. Guys, I want to thank you all for being on the panel. I want to thank the comment section for everything. We had over 400 people watching when Clay brought us on. We still have over 300 watching. We're coming up on 8 o'clock, so we're going to give you guys some time to get ready, settle in for the game with a beverage, enjoy your Monday night. And Evan has one last whiteboard thing. Josh Allen, 450 plus 4 TDs, 82 completion percentage. And that was my bold prediction on Thursday, was Josh Allen would complete over 80% of his passes tonight. Wow. So let's see it happen. No turnovers, clean game. And let's not have to talk about the officiating. How about that? That would be nice, right? Because that seems to be I'm actually glad we made it through the whole panel without having to talk about that. So, all right, guys.
But it's better that we don't.
We'll go around the table for final thoughts, and then we'll end it with the Go Bills right before 8. So, Evan, final thoughts from you. Let's go.
My final thoughts are we got to come in and kind of just dictate what's going on. Got to, step on the throat of the Tennessee Titans, really go away and run for that number 1 seed, because obviously you want the playoffs coming through Buffalo. You want to have that first round bye, and you want to really solidify the number 1 seed, because obviously teams like Kansas City's going to start rolling up soon, and the Baltimore Ravens are 5-1. The Chargers look good. Obviously, you don't want to lose to the Titans, because that gives them a game in their favor going forward for the number 1 seed. So, got to win, got to dictate going forward, got to get that number 1 seed, and let's go Buffalo.
Yeah, the Ravens have somehow managed to not look great until the last couple games and snuck by Detroit. Obviously, they beat Kansas City, and they're sitting there at 5-1, still a big threat. Zach, final thoughts.
All I gotta say is Bills offense is gonna ball out against a relatively subpar defense. Bills defense is going to shut down Derrick Henry, but like I said, he might hit the over on rushing yards and garbage time. And I just think overall, I think the Bills are going to go in and treat all 58% of the Bills fans that are in the stadium to a nice additional home game, and they just go and dominate them. So go Bills.
All right, I like it. And the slug, I like that too. Manny, final thoughts.
Yeah, I think just like last week, I think it's key for the coaching staff to keep it simple and call their plays like they did last week. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't overanalyze things. Just keep it simple. Get the ball moving. Stop Derrick Henry, and I think we'll have this game.
All right, Eric, we'll round it out with you. Final thoughts.
I'm going to tap it off with a quote from my man Stephon Diggs, who said, "Man, keep busting your ass." That's what the Bills are going to keep doing tonight. They're going to keep busting the Titans' ass and busting their own out there in the field. That's what I have to leave you off with.
Love it. No better way to end it than that. Thank you again to the comments section. Thank you again to the panelists. Thank you, Buffalo Fanatics, for hosting the BF Tailgate tonight. Clay and the guys before, and Eric and Evan for being the Iron Men here, going both panels. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the game. Let's get a Bills win, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
Let's go Buffalo.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.